So the time has come for me to review the one and only South Park. One of the best, funniest, most controversial, most outrageous show ever to be put on TV. And Comedy Central's #1 go-to. Or Golden Goose for that matter. And of course, my all-time favorite show. So yeah, I had a long freaking trip with this treasure of a show. It's just so awesome that it's still going strong to this day, even though there may be a little bit of a here and there, some good times, some controversial times, some sad times, but nevertheless it still remains a really powerful show. And well, everything is just perfect. The characters, the writing, the plots, so depending on how they go, and well, the songs, everything holy to them. All this magic comes from the two creators, the dynamic duo of Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who provide the writing, the voices, everything. That's what I kind of like most about it. It's the partnership, how two guys just made an awesome show, taking care of everything, just making everybody happy and smile and have a great time watching. And yeah, I'm just going to specific episodes, either ranging from my favorites or certain ones that I kind of have a little bit of, wordage to, or just ones credited by critics themselves. Yeah, whichever way it comes first. Okay, so technically and chronologically, I technically really got introduced to South Park through when I was coincidentally living back in Colorado, living in my third house, and I think it was when all my relatives came over for family reunion or something like that, and I'm pretty sure that I saw South Park on the big TV. I'm pretty sure that it was the movie, if I'm guessing, because the first time when I saw it, I just saw dead bodies around, and well, I was like, what is this show? Look at those kids. They don't have noses, they don't have ears, the animation is all a little bit wonky. But then later on, when I moved into another house, the fourth house, when I moved to Houston, Texas, that's when I started to really get into South Park. And my first episode started in season 15, titled The Last of the Mexicans. The boys are playing a game of Texas versus Mexicans, and Butters is told that he's not a great leader of Mexico, so it kind of hits him deep, and he goes off to just prove that he is really capable of becoming a leader. So under the name of Mantequilla, he first encounters this white couple who just use him to just clean all around. And so he gets fed up, and then he goes to Mexico, and they praise him for being some kind of hero. And then it starts out to be a real game of Texas versus Mexicans, with Cartman deciding to really wanted to win. So he takes his Texas persona incredibly really good, and then it's this chase scene between him and Butters, and Butters just ends up winning. And then Mexico hails Butters as a true hero. Before I get into any more episodes, I'd just like to take opinion on the first 3 seasons of South Park. Maybe 4. Because I don't know if it's either Parker or Stone or both of them. Mainly Parker. He says that he hated the first 3 seasons, and I can understand why. I mean, heck, I even thought they were stupid itself, because I guess it was during that time where everyone was acting just a little bit just crazy in the head. It can be a little bit meh. But yes, I mainly don't like them because I believe that this was during the time where Stan and Kyle were even bigger buttholes before Cartman took that position in the next in season 5. But there were still some decent episodes here and there. Starting with Cartman gets probed. I'm not going to say the full episode, but it's yeah. Before even South Park was a thing, to be honest, how it originally started out with these little shorts like Jesus versus Frosty and Jesus versus Santa. They became like one of the most popular viral, some of the most popular viral videos at the time, and that caught the attention of, yeah, Comedy Central, and that's how South Park became born. And it's really noticeable in the animation too, how it starts out with cardboard cutouts where they just do frame by frame before switching to animation. And so yeah, like Carmen Gets Probed was the first ever episode that's featured cardboard cutouts before switching to animation from the second episode onwards, which is, yeah, saves them much more time. It's less strenuous. Okay, so as I was saying, pretty other decent episodes that I liked from the first 3 seasons include, but not limited to, let's see. Yeah, Pink Eye, Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh, Damien, let's see, Conjoined Fetus Lady, Chicken Pox, Spooky Fish, depending about like how I see it and stuff, because still, Rainforest Main Forest, Tweak versus Craig. Let's see, Mr. Hanky's Christmas Classics, yeah. And with the addition of season 4, well, yeah, I would say, like, geez, well, not really all that much, except for very crappy Christmas, which is kind of a little bit cool how they replicated Jesus versus Santa, yeah. Terrence and Phillip behind the blow. So it's Earth Day, but all the boys care about is seeing Terrence and Phillip, and they decide to just bring them along for Earth Day to make it like much more special. But they are warned to not like screw up, because if they do, there are gonna be like terrible consequences. But then the boys eventually learn that Terrence and Phillip eventually just broke apart. They are no longer friends anymore, and they gone their separate ways. So they attempt to like reunite each other, but it doesn't really go well as planned, and the Earth Day people just kind of get a little bit ticked off and threaten to just kill them. But it's up until when Kyle makes a big documentary video about how Terrence and Phillip came to be, which is the best part of the episode for me, in my opinion, because I enjoy watching documentary related stuff. And so it does eventually manage to bring Terrence and Phillip back together, and they start like half laughing and farting, and then, well, all's well that ends well. The new Terrence and Phillip movie trailer. So the boys, along with Butters taking Kenny's place as the 4th friend in their group, they wait for seeing the new Terrence and Phillip trailer that is planning to just come along, but it keeps on getting like interrupted by either like somebody changing the channel or the Russell Crowe show where you're just beating people up everywhere, and they just keep on finding any place that has a TV in order for them to show. In order for them to see it come true. And, well, a lot of hijinks ensues. But it's revealed that the whole time that Butters has been left alone, he's been alone this whole time with nobody in the house, so they managed to just make it in time, only to find out that the trailer was nothing. It was all for nothing. All this was just showing Terrence and Phillip pooting, and then they enjoy it. It's the greatest thing that they ever saw. Professor Chaos, Stan, Kyle, and Cartman all agree that Butters is a little bit too lame for him to be Kenny's replacement, and this brings Butters down so much that he decides to become a supervillain, and he doesn't really do kind of a good job with it when he does just harmless stuff like switching different soups and, well, doing basic like harmless villain type of stuff instead of big bad business. But meanwhile, Stan, Kyle, and Cartman decide to put on a contest for who is going to be their 4th friend. And, well, once again, that's like the best part for me about like who's going to be it. And then there's a little bit of like a little funny, sad, like little part at the end. Like, will Professor Chaos's plan work? Who will be the boys' 4th friend? And which one of these beloved characters has died and will never be seen again? The results will come to you now. No, Tweak, Miss Jokes on D. Casa Bonita. It's Kyle's birthday and he's inviting all his friends to Casa Bonita, except for Cartman because, well, all he ever does is call him names and rip on him for being Jewish. Even though Kyle himself is not one to talk, as he rips on Cartman for being fat, so it's a little bit of a hypocritical, but, well, yeah, this is like one of the many things that's kind of like a little bit complicated. Because long time, I just had no idea that Cartman was a bully when I read about it on the official South Park websites. And yeah, I was like, oh yeah, it makes more sense. Even though he's not really doing a good job at it. It's like Stan or Kyle or anybody else is like much more, kind of like, be much more of a butthole than Cartman would ever be. But he just flip-flops here and there. Like, he's just a little bit of a freaking coward. But anyways, though, Cartman does everything he tries in order to just go to Casa Bonita since it's his favorite restaurant. The Mexican Disneyland, so to speak. So it's up until, like, if Butters, who's fit as Cartman's replacement, if he can't be able to make it, then Cartman will take that position. And so he plans to just get rid of Butters whichever way he can, ultimately leading him into sending him to the dump. And this gives Cartman the opportunity to just go to Casa Bonita, but up until that, it's revealed that Butters has been found and the police are on their way to take Cartman to jail. He makes a mad dash to do all the fun things that he wants to do, and then, like, he says that he's going to juvenile hall for a week. And asked it if it was worth it, he responds with, totally. Like, I don't care, I just had an awesome time and I'm never going to forget this. Raisins. Wendy decides to break up with Stan but still wants to remain friends. And Stan starts to go on like a little bit of a downward spiral and his friends try to snap him out of it. But after a little bit of a communication problem between Jimmy and Wendy, Stan just really can't get over himself. So the boys decide to take him to to Raisins, my fault, to Raisins in order to just cheer him up, but nothing can be able to like break him. But meanwhile, Butters is under the belief that a Raisins girl has the hots for him when really, like, they're just using them in order to just like get money. And well, as Stan really attempts to get Wendy back and sees that she's with Token now, Kyle suggests that he rather goes hangs out with freaking goth kids, and which he openly does. And well, it just goes back and forth between Stan and Butters about like how they're going on with their lives. But eventually Stan had to learn that he can't let his pain run his life, and Butters, he just needs to like, well, he says that he relies on his happiness in order to keep him going, in order for make him feel better from the sadness. And so Stan gets his life back together, and then he continues on playing football with his friends and just not going to take any crap anymore about being sad. Quest for rating. The boys are not doing so well when their news show is getting low ratings, while Craig's show, Animals Close Up with a Wide Angle Lens, or whatever it was called, is getting so many views. And so they decide to just step it up a notch by coming up with as many ideas as they can, but they find it way too difficult. Which is also based on around the time where Parker and Stone were having no clue about what ideas to bring for South Park, which is kind of like relatable and understandable, because like will this idea work? Will this work? How are we gonna do this? How is it ever gonna like spark anyone's interest? And so, while they try to come up with as many ideas as they can, they decide to just blow it all off. The losing edge. So for some reason, the boys are just fed up with just playing baseball, because like why are they tired of it if they wanted to do it in the first place? Like, did their parents force them to do it? So their parents are just proud of them no matter what whenever they win a game, but they're shocked to find out that, well, they're just going to keep on playing baseball for like the rest of their lives. But meanwhile, Randy can't even sit down to watch his son play because he keeps on getting in fights. And so it just starts off with a montage of the boys trying everything in their power to just get out of baseball and want to have fun. While meanwhile, Randy is in a parody of Rocky from the 70s, and he gets like really freaking scared when Bat Dad comes on the screen, challenging him. So yeah, basically the whole entire thing is just a parody of Rocky, and well, it is hilarious, and it is kind of a little bit encouraging and stuff. Even though Randy is having his moments of being just plain Randy, but it is worth for the boys since they ultimately like have no more baseball for themselves, and Stan says, "Dad, you're the greatest," and yep, the day is saved. Make love, not Warcraft. After getting tired of getting repeatedly killed in Warcraft, the boys decide to do whatever it takes in order to beat this freaking like nerd on this freaking mystery player that keeps on like killing them and preventing them to move on in the game. To just yeah. They're ultimately dealing with a guy that has no life and is actually based on a real life guy who sadly passed away. But so yeah, they just spend their days online training in order to get stronger to beat their foe. And they ultimately do, and the world is saved. That's pretty much it. But what really is noticeable is about like how the animation is. How it is like with Microsoft, I think, Ubisoft, or what, like whatever World of Warcraft is made from. But it said that Trey Parker kind of like hated this episode, but I still find it a little bit fascinating. Because yeah, that's another thing. The animation style about how South Park can go. It can either go like live action or anything like that. Anything to just make it just stand out, change and stuff. So Leanne is fed up with her demon child, Cartman, when every single thing that she tries to do is never really too good for him, since he basically just runs her life. So she ultimately calls Caesar Milan the dog whisperer in order to just, well, put him in his place. And this drives Cartman to just like go out of the house and find some place for shelter and food. But there's no stopping him when he ultimately just gives in and starts to change. So he ultimately decides to kill his mom, but he just can't go with it. And so ultimately it's just so Leanne just can't really deal with her devil of a son Cartman anymore and decides to just call a nanny. But when every nanny fails to try and change Cartman, she ultimately calls Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer, in order to put him in his place. And it starts working when Cartman himself gets fed up and decides to run away. But having nowhere to go, he comes back home and, well, it looks like that he's about to change. But he has the idea to kill his mom, but he can't really go through with it. So when it looks like he ultimately has changed for the best, his greediness and evilness and everything inside of him just really can't really go away, since, yes, dear, you can have everything you want. And it's like, yes, I rule the world, I rule my mom, I rule everything. With apologies to Jesse Jackson. While on national TV, on Wheel of Fortune, Randy inadvertently blurts out the N-word in order to fill the puzzle of people who annoy you. And, well, he basically becomes like a social pariah, meaning that everyone calls him the N guy. And it's kind of like a really great subversion of like how the word affects like black people, but like using it against Randy, that's kind of like really clever. This is a really clever episode, and it actually is praised for it. The episode actually really got praised for how like it's. Apologies to Jesse Jackson. So while on Wheel of Fortune on national TV, Randy inadvertently shouts out the N-word and he becomes a social pariah. And then ultimately everyone calls him the N guy, and to think about it, it's kind of a really clever episode. And it was even praised for how people use that word for, of course, black people, but it's used on Randy. It's really, really clever. And meanwhile, Carmen just can't stop laughing at a man with dwarfism, Dr. David Nelson. He tries to just keep his calm, be like, words are like bullets. I let the words go past me. But he just can't let go, and he challenges him to a fight, and he tries to prove his point, but nobody gets it. And Stan, meanwhile, of course, since Token seems like a little bit just not comfortable from how Randy shouted that word, he just can't deal with Stan about he doesn't get that the word just means something to him, but to Stan it just doesn't mean anything. So he ultimately says he doesn't get it, and that's what Token just means. Le Petit Tourette. So after meeting a boy with Tourette syndrome, Cartman ultimately decides to just get away with saying whatever he wants in order to just, get away with his, I'm evil, I can do whatever I want kind of schemes. But it ultimately bites him in the butt when he ultimately can't really control what he actually says, revealing everything so secretive about him. But Kyle is not buying it. He just ultimately tries to expose him for the faker that he is, but Cartman really, really cannot help himself. So after Kyle's so-called plan doesn't really work anymore due to multiple people appearing on a Chris Hansen show and shooting themselves to death and everyone runs out, Cartman is ultimately saved and thanks Kyle, and he's left really confused about what the freak just happened just now. The Imagination Land trilogy. All this was based off of a bet that Cartman made to Kyle to prove that leprechauns were real. And once they actually do find a leprechaun, Kyle refuses to go along with the bets that he would suck Cartman's Waybles. And ultimately, Kyle, Stan, Kenny, Butters, and Jimmy are taken away to Imagination Land, a place full of magic and wonder, the most beloved fictional animated characters and stuff, but is ultimately attacked by terrorists who blow up the wall that protects Imagination Land from the most evil characters ever. So they need to come up with a plan to stop them in order from them from taking over the world and stuff. And it's all up to Butters with his imagination in order to just put everything right. He gets trouble here and there, but then he ultimately gets better. And then, the whole point of this is how the imagination is important to the world, how it means something that's always just going to be around in order for everyone to just be happy. And Elementary School Musical. A High School Musical parody, so to speak. And it's a really great setup because most of the songs on South Park are pretty awesome themselves. But the boys are really confused how everyone is so into High School Musical when this, Zac Efron character comes along singing, and Stan is under the belief that he's gonna steal Wendy from him. But it turns out that the Zac Efron kid is not really interested in singing, as that's what his dad wants him to do. He ultimately wants to become a basketball player, but he sees that as sissy for anybody who is not into music. Again, it's a really great subversion. It's hilarious and clever. So Stan, he says that everyone else is just so into just singing and dancing and all that stuff that they think anybody could be popular from it. Once he brings up the fact that Butters is kind of cooler than all of them combined, they decide to just form their own dancing and singing group. But it turns out that all the girls just care about the Zac Efron kid, no matter what he does. So all of it was just a big waste of time. The Coon. So Carmen decides to take the city into his own hands, protecting it however he can under the superhero persona of the Coon, which is in fact a racial slur against black people, which, well, fits Cartman since he himself is a big racist. So while he's not really getting much of the attention, all of it is focused on Mysterion, a mysterious heroic kid who decides to protect the city the right way, and people praise him as the city hero, but that leads to Carmen just being jealous. So he tries to just get rid of a Mysterion however way possible. He attempts to blow up a hospital, which is a reference to the Dark Knight. In fact, this whole episode is a reference to like the Dark Knight and Watchmen respectively. He teams up with Professor Chaos and General Disarray in order to do that, but they can't really go through with it. And they had a big fight, which is actually just a wimpy slap fight. And Mysterion reveals himself to just be a normal kid. And Cartman decides to just keep on protecting the city as the Coon. Fish sticks. Jimmy is trying to come up with some of the best jokes he could come up with, but ultimately when his mother brings him fish sticks, he ultimately decides to come up with the funniest joke ever, which everybody immediately loves, except for Kanye West, who doesn't really understand the joke when it's brought up upon him, as he actually believes that he is not an actual gay fish. And just every single time that everybody just tells him the joke, he just gets more furious and starts killing people and stuff. And meanwhile, like, Carmen is under the impression that he came up with the fish sticks joke himself. That's taking all the credit for himself. And well, they ultimately decide to just, well, none of that matters. It's all about just working together, just creating whatever it is to just make people happy and to joke about it and stuff. And Kanye, he ultimately decides to just stick with being a so-called gay fish, really just taking that to heart. The Tale of Scrooty McBoogerballs. After finding out that the book The Catcher in the Rye means nothing to the boys, as they find out that it's banned for reasons unknown, because really, what's the big deal about it? They decided to make their own book called The Tale of Scrooty McBoogerballs, with the most grossest, most outrageous thing that anybody would ever read, that they managed to just get to the end without even freaking just vomiting. They just can't really resist just puking it out. And so when Stan's mom finds like their writing and stuff, they fear that they're going to get in trouble, so they decide to put the blame on Butters, and he is praised, and he just gets like all the attention, and the boys just need to like convince everyone that they came up with the story and not Butters. It's not until Butters decides to write a second so-called novel, and it doesn't really go so well. He doesn't have that much imagination that the boys have, that it starts to just make people consider that it's better than Scrooty McBoogerballs, and that ultimately leads to the death of the Kardashians, and everyone hates him. You're getting old. Stan finally turns 10, and everything just really starts to change to him as he goes to quote-unquote puberty, as everything that he ever likes just is not really the same to him, as everyone else is kind of like, well, just better for themselves. Everything is normal. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But meanwhile, Randy, he decides to just anybody, like any idiot can come up with being musical or anything like that, something like that. But it's ultimately revealed that he is unhappy with his current life and just wishes that things were just different. And that leads to him divorcing Sharon, and Stan is much more depressed than ever. And I gotta say, this episode really hits. I guess it does relate to Parker and Stone themselves getting quote-unquote old, despite the fact that 40s and 50s are not really considered just, come on, old, but that song, Landslide, by the actual Stevie Nicks, who was joked about in this episode, it really does get you really emotional. Nightmare on FaceTime. Randy decides to go into business, family business, at Blockbuster Studio, but it's so empty and down that nobody even bothers to just go in there. Nobody shows up. It starts a little bit of a Shining kind of feel, with Randy channeling Jack Torrance, and getting much more crazier every single time that, well, nobody decides to just like come to Blockbuster. And meanwhile, the boys decide to go to a costume contest dressed as the Avengers, but are ultimately but once like the Redbox killers, these two just kind of like break in and just will kill people and stuff. They just need to be stopped, and they ultimately do, and just Blockbuster just burns down due to Shelly, and well, there's not really all that much happening. It's a decent Halloween episode. It could have just been more. I like the Shining parody, but it's alright. The Black Friday trilogy has to be like one of the greatest things ever come to South Park. It does kind of like fall in line with the game South Park: The Stick of Truth, which, well, yeah, it's a good touch. And it's ultimately a Game of Thrones parody with like the boys. They're in a war about like what is the best console, PS4 or Xbox One. They split in half, they divide. It's just conflict. And I just need to say, just every single episode for here, the Black Friday trilogy is just worth watching. It's hilarious, it's brutal, it's crazy, it's the scenes with Cartman entering that old man's garden along with whoever he brings there is always a laugh. And Kenny becoming a Japanese princess, aka Princess Zelda, that was a little bit hilarious. Post-COVID is yet another one of the greatest things that South Park has to offer, as it tells the future, the near future of the characters in South Park, especially the kids, seeing them all grown up and dealing with life, especially with Stan, since he's miserable as he's a whiskey consultant and his mother and Shelly sadly passed away and he's not on good terms with Randy. Kyle is the counselor, the school counselor, like online, I would think. Kenny was supposedly this awesome, famous scientist, and Cartman, of all people, has become a rabbi. And a happy Jewish family, converted to Judaism, which is, of course, Kyle thinks is a little bit of a joke. Which it is. He never really intended to become a straight-up rabbi. He just doesn't want the future to change. He wants to keep his family safe. He doesn't want to lose them, as he believes that he has changed for the better. Now, following up with post-COVID is the boys ultimately find out that they need to like forgive each other. That before the COVID like just ruined everyone's life, they just had to go back in time and just forgive each other. And yes, this is the most controversial part, with Cartman ultimately giving up his family and he's now just a homeless bum. It's really sad, but also, well, a little bit questionable how this is payback or karma for everything that he's ever done in the world and to everyone who's ever come into contact with him. But sad that he did lose his family, that he did sacrifice himself to do so. It's just unbelievable. That's what it is. Okay, now to go into the cast, I'm just gonna go one by one with the actor and the respective character. So starting with Trey Parker, with Stan Marsh, who is ultimately based on and voiced by Parker himself. He is considered the heart of the show. He's considered the most tender of his friends. He's just the sensible one, the one, the man with a plan, Stan with a plan. But yes, like I said before in the beginning, he and Kyle were kind of like a little bit of buttholes for the first 3 seasons, maybe even up until like season 6, yeah. And that's where like kind of like Stan just much more developed much more. He's still like a decent character and stuff. And good old Cartman. Everybody loves Cartman, the mascot of South Park, the most identifiable character in South Park. Also, and especially Cartman's. And yes, everybody really does love Cartman, as Trey Parker himself has credited him as his most favorite character. So like he, along with Randy and Butters, are some of Trey and Matt's favorite characters overall. And yes, like before, like in the first 4 seasons, he was made to believe this fat, obnoxious kid that nobody really likes, because why they even bother having him as a friend? It's not until season 5 where the true birth of Cartman has started. Starting with Scott Tenorman Must Die, where he just gets fed up as getting tricked out of his money due to older kid Scott Tenorman. He decides to come up with a plan to just really get back at him, and in a big way. He kills Scott's parents, grounds them up in the chili, and feeds it to Scott. And while he's crying his eyes out from in front of Radiohead, his favorite band, who mock him, unaware of the fact that his parents have died, Cartman just goes up to his face and licks his tears, and it's just really disturbing and unsettling for my stomach to hear this. And so the boys say it's best for them to not to take off Cartman anymore, but yeah, you better believe so, because he is just relentless. He's ruthless. He is the devil himself. He's even more evil than Satan, yeah. But I just gotta say, through his moments of being like a bully and stuff, it is understandable how he could just be a little bit too much. Like even when scenes kind of like look a little bit awkward, and he just keeps on going out about being so freaking, well, out of his mind. I'm like, dude, quit embarrassing yourself. Why are you doing this? All the attention you think are also cool and stuff, but everyone just thinks you suck. But nevertheless, he's one of the important characters in all of media, and well, he's here to stay. Now, Randy being crowned as the village idiot of the town, it's interesting how he just started out being just a normal guy before it starts going out being like the typical just dumb dad. And by, well, not really just like all that dumb, but just crazy, just getting away with the most craziest shenanigans that he can ever get himself into. He does have his humorous moments, and well, I guess he's one of the more decent cartoon dads. May not be the best, but he still just does anything that he can to just stand out. Kyle Broflovsky, based on and voiced by Matt Stone. Yeah, I did have a little bit of problems with him, considering like how much conflict he and Cartman get into about like whose side am I gonna be on, which is, yes, one of the most difficult things, like the blue pill red pill situation. I just gotta say, yes, he's the voice of reason of the group, happens to be the so-called brains of the group, so yeah, he's got like good things going for him whenever he can. Especially if not Cartman is like involved in it. And now with Candy McCormick, the poor kid of the group, the butt monkey of the group, the kid that dies in almost every episode, based off of Parker and Stone's real childhood friend, who used to wear an orange coat that would muffle his voice and would skip school often to say the joke about that he died. And also, like, it may sound like Kenny is speaking gibberish, but he's actually speaking real words. They're just muffled by his coats. And if you read in the South Park scripts online and stuff, it's actual words. But he does have his moments to shine, especially his Mysterion moments, taking care of his little sister, making sure that she's all happy and whatnot. And And yeah, he's nothing else to say. Nothing else more. And now everyone knows it's Butters. Again, this is crazy. Like, Butters was really just originally just a background character who didn't really do much up until like seasons 3 or 4 and stuff, where he actually had his first speaking role in the episode Two Guys Naked in a Hot Tub. And he was originally supposed to go do names like Poof Poof and if there was any other one, I can't really remember, but he's just the most childlike, the most nicest person you ever want to meet, the kid that doesn't really swear that often, but that doesn't help until later seasons. But it's just questioning about like how somebody this pure can have such hateful, deceitful, just the worst parents you ever see on TV. I swear. How does he do it? But nevertheless, he's still a memorable character for South Park. And, well, there's nothing to it but to stay all sweet and buttery. Oh yes, and another thing too, that he is based off of Parker and Stone's friend, the animation director Eric Stowe, who called him Little Buddy and Butters, so he's based on Stowe. Mona Marshall, who took over the majority of the female voices for the first few seasons of South Park, the first 3 seasons to be exact, up until she sadly passed away in 1999. And well, she was really, really cool. She was everything. She had a good career going, but ultimately took her life out of fear that she would lose her talent. And no, like you can't let that get to you. You can't let the beliefs just like change your life or anything. If she was still around, she would still just, well, I guess like still collaborate with any other female like castmates in South Park, like Mona Marshall, who also like took over for some of the voices, especially some of the boys' moms, and April Stewart, who provides the majority of the voices as well, being the voice of Leanne Cartman, Sharon Marsh, Carol McCormick. She's amazing. But the one name that would have to be like Isaac Hayes as Chef. The most generous, the most reasonable, the most intelligent like adult character for South Park, I would say. Because he's the one that the boys always come to whenever they're in trouble, and he always has songs that just teach them some stuff. I just miss him so very much that he didn't really need to go out that way. They didn't really need to kill Chef off, in my opinion. He could have still just worked out with like somebody else. Somebody else would like providing the voice. In my opinion, I think maybe like Kevin Michael Richardson, maybe. I mean, like, he can sing as well, because they said that they put together like thinking of soul type of brothers in order to voice Chef. It was originally supposed to be like Barry White, but he turned it down because he found it offensive, and then that ultimately led to Isaac Hayes, and he freaking nailed Chef. But then he ultimately decided to just quit the show after the episode Trapped in the Closet, which made fun of his religion of Scientology. Even though that South Park makes fun of like nearly everything, it's a little bit just, you know, mixed in between about like whose side to take. It's just testy and uncomfortable. But Chef still remains like an important character for South Park to always remember, as well as Isaac Hayes for his gifts. Alright, so in conclusion, South Park is one of the most treasured gifts to the world. Again, it's everything that you ever want in a show to be just successful and quotable, and has tons of different characters to love and to root for, and to just have a good time watching. And the media itself, like the video games with The Stick of Truth and The Fractured Butthole, they're worth playing. And well, for me, like the number one most epic thing I would say would be like the 25th anniversary, where they like went on concerts, and it was such an awesome big blast for South Park fans to enjoy and to remember. Once in a lifetime opportunity, but still, it serves as the inspiration for me to provide like my own projects for the world, and that's what I'm still going to keep on doing. Whatever they do with South Park, whether it's like they just keep on going with whatever else they can think of in order to just remain strong and hilarious and everything, I will always be waiting.